You're all here for CS-106? Yes? All right, so what are we going to do in the class? Let me blow this up a little bit. Um, this is basically 2D programming, game programming. We'll be using MakeCode, which is an online block-based language. Out of curiosity, what has anybody done any other programming or CS courses before? Yeah, we'll just go around the room, yeah. Python, okay. Nothing. Robert, that's right. Okay. But not 111, right? Okay. Okay. Like the Lego stuff. Yeah. Right. Well, Mako to look a lot like that. Nothing. Jojo, you had 101 with me. Python, nothing. 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 Okay. That's good. Yeah, this is very much meant as a you've never really done much programming or a little bit in the past is fine. So, um, we'll do most of the stuff in MakeCode. And one of the reasons I like MakeCode, and I'll show it to you in a moment, is that you can program it same platform both in block languages and also in Python. So we'll start in sort of block language form because that's a good way for novice programmers to get to it. And then we'll kind of towards the end of the class sort of start to switch a little bit to Python, and maybe also look at some other platforms or game programming engines. The From the standpoint of if any of you are interested in going on to taking further computer science, like CS-111, I've designed the class in such a way that you'd be ready for it next semester if you want to take it. And if not, that's fine too. Um, anyway, so as you guys know, it's a half credit class, so we'll quit at spring break. Um, this is only the second time I've actually taught half semester classes, so it's a little weird. Um, I asked Blix because he often has a half semester classes for advice on it, and he gave me some good pointers. Um, the in the second half of the semester, I'll basically just repeat this class. So tell all your friends, right? And then um, what we'll do during finals week. So this is the awkward part about a half semester class, right? Is there is no midterm week, right? So when do we do that? Well, we just don't. Um, I'm not going to give you guys an exam because boo, right? Why would we do that? But we are going to kind of do a game jam, and we'll do it with the second half of the semester, guys, during finals week, and basically have all of you guys plus all of them with your final games, and just kind of rock out in the library and play games, um, and eat donuts or something. Um, yeah, so we'll obviously talk about all that later, but most of what we're going to do is during the class is kind of live coding. We'll do stuff together on the computer and just kind of talk through the process. Some days we'll use as kind of studio time and just work, and I'll kind of float around the room. Um, and then there's going to be some activities that you guys will do down in the game lab and on Canvas. So um, the in order to learn to program 2D video games, right? There's obviously the programming aspect of it that you guys are going to learn. That's the whole point of the class. But one learns uh, like what 2D video games have you played in the past? Okay, Pong. That's definitely going back there, JoJo. Yeah, original Mario, right? How many of you guys had an original 8-bit Nintendo when you were a kid? Yeah. Super Nintendo, Game Boy, or PSP? Okay. S- Okay. And then there's the emulator world, which is where you basically are playing it on modern hardware, even though it's the old school game. So it's as if you're playing it on a real hardware. Um, So one of the things that we're going to do, and basically it's about a quarter worth of the class, is you guys are going to play retro video games, and as much as possible on original hardware, which I'll have kind of set up over in the game lab. And over the 7 weeks, what I'm trying to do is to um, uh, basically march us through little vignettes in video game history, starting with the arcade era this week. Back when you'd go and feed quarters into stuff and, late 70s, early 80s. So there would be sort of some of the old classics, Pac-Man, Galaxian, uh, Pong, those sorts of things. And then next week will be the Atari, and then the 8-bit Nintendo, and then the handheld era, and then the Super Nintendo, and retro computer games. And so we'll kind of march through video game history. Not, in any complete way. It'll be just sort of snippets of it. Although as I was sort of getting ready for the semester, I was thinking, the history of video games, man, I can make a killer tutorial out of this. But alas, it's the spring. Okay, so the blah blah blah, the syllabus you guys can read, blah 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 blah. Um, I guess the two things to keep in mind, like, look, it's 8 a.m. I know nobody wants to be awake at this time, but my ass is going to be here, so your ass is going to be here too. Um, and so don't skip class because that's bad. Okay. Um, and we'll talk about AI and all of that stuff later. All right. So it's a syllabus you guys can read. Yeah. All right. So on Canvas, if you go to the home page, I've got it set up with a bunch of modules. Um, and the video game history things are all called fourth hour. And so there's 7 of those modules. And basically, what I'm going to have you guys do is, so let me open, for example, Pac-Man. Um, well, I'll put some text there after I've got it working. This is set up as a discussion board, right? And so, and same thing with the other ones. So you'll play the game or read the text or watch the video because I've got some readings from books and articles and things like that about video game history. I found some good stuff on YouTube, like recordings of old broadcasts, like what did the 6 o'clock news say about video games in 1981? Kind of interesting. How people were talking about it back then, and also it's funny just to see like what people looked like back then, and what cars looked like back then, and it kind of is scary. Uh, and then obviously the video games themselves. So the discussion boards are basically you guys can comment and reflect, okay, I enjoyed this game, I really like this mechanic, or oh, this was super annoying, or man, that video was funny, or obviously a bit more in depth than that, but that's sort of the idea, right? Is that we'll engage with some video game history, and that will, I think, in a lot of ways, inform the way that you structure the games that we're programming, right? So particularly when we pull off the training wheels, and it's like, okay, make something. Well, you hopefully will get inspired by some of the games that you've seen. Um, okay, so that's basically all on Canvas, and for the most part, everything you'll submit through Canvas. There will be a few things that we'll have to do that are better done on paper, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Basically, with data encoding, we'll have to do a little bit of math. All right, so let's look at make code um, and get a sense for it. So um, I'll just start a blank project just for um, and then under code options, you can do blocks, JavaScript, and Python. I always leave it on that one. You can also create a user, and that'll be one of the first things that you guys need to do is create a user. And actually, if you just do continue with Microsoft, and then your Wabash account will log you right in. So it's the same single sign-on and all of that. Um, and this is sort of what it looks like. It's kind of a mix of the 8 and 16-bit eras. sort of thinking about classic Game Boy or Game Boy Advanced or Game Boy Color kind of looking thing. And it's all block based. So the code, such as it is very friendly looking. Um, and you've got different little blocks and stuff that we'll be able to drag into place. And then, you start to put all this together and eventually you'll get a game. Yeah. Yes. So Scratch is another platform. And in fact, I'll pull that up too. Yeah, so Scratch looks very similar. And in fact, the Make code and Scratch are built actually on top of the same thing. Um, so there is a lot of visual similarity to them, but there also are some differences in terms of how Scratch works versus MakeCode. So the reason I used to use Scratch for a course like this, but I've kind of switched over to MakeCode for a couple of reasons. One, there's some under the hood stuff that I like better, but two, and this is why I really like it, is you click that, and suddenly I can program in Python instead of the visual code. And what's really cool is you can go back and forth, right? So you can use the block-based stuff to kind of help you figure out how the Python structure would look, and vice versa. You cannot do that with Scratch, or at least that nobody's added that functionality to it. Um, Also, Scratch, the way it handles objects is kind of, it makes sense what they were doing, but you can do some slightly more advanced stuff with make code. So um, anyway, um, yeah, but because it's got the Python stuff, that'll be kind of the end of the course. Is sort of we'll bridge and say, okay, we've done a bunch of stuff in the block code. Let's sort of transition over to Python and do what does the exact same stuff look like, and what are the advantages of programming in Python or any other text-based language as opposed to the graphical stuff of MakeCode. Because I think what you guys will realize after a few weeks is that the block-based stuff is great, but it's also in a sense limiting, and you'll kind of feel that tension. And when you do, that's when it's time to kick off the training wheels and do Python. So anyway, um, okay, so that's kind of the big picture here. And today's activity, what I'd like to do is actually has nothing to do with the computer. So I'm going to quit the stream and we're going to play a game, not because we just want to sit around and play games at 8 in the morning, but there's a real point to it. Okay. So any other questions before I kill the stream for the good of the order? No? Okay.